What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to another episode of the In the Paint podcast here on the network, where we break down everything the NCAA basketball has to offer for us. And of course, when I say us, I mean myself and my friend and co-host Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. The sun's out. The seasons are changing, and I don't mean from fall to winter to spring. I mean the seasons are changing. Football is done. We're days away from NCAA basketball conference tournaments, the March Madness, and I understand the Padres played their first spring game today, so that's why I say the seasons are changing, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, don't check the score on that one, by the way, but
Ah,
I have the alerts, on MLB, and let's just say the Dodgers scored 8 runs before the Padres recorded their second out. So hey, but look, it's spring training. Very few things matter in spring training other than health. So, but yeah, it's not ideal. 14-1 the final there. But
oh,
yeah, yeah. Like I said though, game one, long way to go. Just get out of there healthy, but not ideal. But yes, you're right. As you said, the seasons are changing, and this is kind of the moment that I think college basketball takes center stage. Sure, obviously we are going to be seeing more spring training. We have the NHL, we have the NBA playoffs going, or excuse me, seasons progressing towards the playoffs. But in terms of, the next champion that's going to be crowned in major American sports is going to be in April for the national champion, March Madness. So all eyes have kind of started to focus on that. Definitely myself included, been watching a lot of college basketball over the last few weeks since the end of the Super Bowl, and it's leading into, and we've kind of been berating the point, but it's seems like every week we come in and we have the top 25, but by the time we're recording, it seems like 25 to 30% of the top 25 have already gone down. And it's incredible. Even this week, obviously, UConn getting, put on a clinic. Creighton put on a shooting clinic at home. Really tough to win anywhere in the country, definitely in the Big East. UConn looked pretty much unbeatable for an early part of the conference season. They struggled against Creighton, and then of course we did see, excuse me, Purdue go down as well. So to Ohio State, which is an interesting one there. And then even last night, I don't know if you saw Illinois just up, I think
yes.
12 with 2 minutes to go, or 12 pretty late in that game. They end up losing. I think they were up 7 with 40 seconds to go, and Penn State goes on a 8-0 run. And once again, that's Penn State. With all due respect to my dad's favorite college. They're not a basketball school, so that was a tough look for Illinois. But overall, Raider Jim, as we continue to get closer, as I said, I think we're now essentially probably a month away, 4 weeks away from the tournament tipping off. What are your thoughts as we inch closer and closer to March Madness? Oh,
I'm getting bad delay.
oh, there we go. I was just wondering, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering as we get closer and closer towards March Madness, kind of your thoughts as we continue to just see parity run rampant.
Well, I know during the NFL season, you and I had a heck of a time.
Ugh.
We kind of felt like we kept getting thrown off the treadmill because we
Mhm.
thought, okay, we'll give it a week, we'll give it 2 weeks, we'll give it to week 6. And even into those last few weeks of the season, there was just still confusion. Each and every weekend, there was something happened that shouldn't have happened. And just for the sake of today's podcast, I went through the schedule top 25 since February 10th, which was the Saturday, a couple Saturdays ago. 22 upsets in the top 25 rankings, and that doesn't count any losses where it may have been two ranked teams playing. But
Mm.
going back to the 10th of February, UNLV took down New Mexico, the Zags took down Kentucky, Florida took down Auburn, Rutgers took down Wisconsin, A&M took down Texas, and then Texas Tech took down Tex. I forget who they took down. They took down A&M, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just went on and on and on. But then the two notable ones that you said, UConn losing on the 20th to Creighton. After UConn, you would have thought if something was going to happen to UConn, it was going to be when they played Marquette. And
Yeah.
that ended up just
They,
being
oh,
hands in the air. What happened to Marquette that day? They didn't show up. And then Creighton turns around and plays the game that they bit, but as you said, also put on a shooting clinic.
yeah.
So this goes to show you this March Madness could be the upset March Madness of all upsets because nobody is safe. Nobody's playing flawless. This isn't like it was a couple years ago when it was Gonzaga and Baylor going down to the wire. Nobody's lost a game yet. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's losing on any given Tuesday, any given Thursday, any given Saturday. And wow, it's going to be quite a tournament. And be interesting to see how the final draw lays out. And I would watch for one of those teams, 6 seed or higher, to make a real strong run.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it last year, obviously, with San Diego State, Florida A&M, and Miami, or excuse me, Florida Atlantic, and Miami, and even UConn. I mean, everyone's going to kind of look back at UConn in that tournament as like this juggernaut, and they were, but I think they were a 5 or a 6 seed, 4, 5, or 6. They weren't highly seeded, and now obviously they will. I think 3 1 seeds are already accounted for, just looking ahead, unless outside of something cataclysmic, because once again, yes, we do talk about Purdue did go down, and some of these other big time schools as well, but you're also going to be looking at probably that 4th number 1 seed that's going to have 7 or maybe even 8 losses. I mean, you look at number
Bingo.
4 and number 5 in the country right now, they have 6 or 7 losses right now, and we're 2-3 weeks away from conference tournaments getting rolling. So more losses are going to be on the table. It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, who gets that 4th and final number 1 seed. And as you said, which of the seeds that are, like I said, I don't know if they'll make it in. They've been really disappointing, really, in conference, but it's because they play in the Big 12. But a team like an Oklahoma, do they have a run in them
Yes.
like a UConn did? And they're struggling, and I've really been disappointed with what they put together in conference. But that's a team in the right matchup, in the right scenario, they could get rolling. And the big thing with Purdue, obviously, we all know about Zach Edey. He's going to win Player of the Year, well deserved. He's obviously a force at this level, no doubt about it. But there is a blueprint out there for beating them or beating him, which then in turns beating him. I hate to say it, with all due respect to the 11 other athletes on Purdue, if you shut down Zach Edey, you have a pretty good shot of beating Purdue. Most teams do, not everyone, obviously, but even last year we saw FDU do it, and then we've seen Ohio State. They just immediately crashed Zach Edey. They forced him to either put the ball on the floor or pass it out of a double team, made him uncomfortable. He's usually better than that, no doubt about it. We all have our off nights. But yeah, it's the blueprint is out there to beat Purdue. Can you do it? That's another question. But in terms of UConn, I think if the blueprint is shoot 60% from the field or whatever the stats were, I like my chances of having a blueprint of shutting one guy down rather than counting on my entire team to shoot over 60%. And that's why I still look at UConn as a very strong contender, obviously, and Purdue as well. But Houston is the ultimate wild card because I do wonder if the Big 12 is skewing things, much like the Big East did last year with UConn, because UConn went on a run of where they lost 4 out of 5, and that really probably cost them a top 4 seed. Houston's not going to probably, struggle to that point, but I think they are a lot better than what they've shown in the Big 12. They've been very, very productive in the Big 12, but I love the way this team plays defense, very tenacious. It's almost like if San Diego State could play that athletic ball offensively, that's the type of team that they want to put together. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or if you have any thoughts on the situation, going on up in New York. New York's collegiate team, St. John's, with Rick Pitino. Maybe not the honeymoon has definitely wore off, and He seems like a bitter man right now.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I'd like to say I was trying to compare it a little bit in my head to a friend of mine, a colleague I had years ago, who actually was quite an accomplished baseball coach on the high school and uh, junior college level. And he got out of it, was asked by somebody, one of his former players, hey, come coach with me, this high school freshman team. He went back one year and halfway through the season, I said, hey, so how's it going now? Back with the kids coaching and all that. Shook his head and he said, biggest mistake I ever made. He goes, I figured out one thing. He goes, A, the athletes are a lot different now. Even at this age, even at this young age, they're much different. They don't have the dedication they used to. They want to play it their way because they already know everything. They already know more than you. And I'm just too old to put up with it. So I mean that was it. And there's a difference. And you can say, well, yeah, the guy's 71 or whatever he is. But then you look at a Tom Izzo, but there's a difference character-wise and everything else between a Rick Pitino and a Tom Izzo, and you can't put your players on blast
Yeah.
in the media. That's the worst thing you can do. That was the prime time telling everybody in the world how his offensive line sucks. I mean, that doesn't win any friends and influence people. And why would you want your kid to go play there at that point? That, you know, at this point, you know, and then you come back 2 days later, and it's just like, I was just a little upset.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it. You know, no. You either stand by what you said or you apologize the next day. But you don't come back and then when they put up a good game, decide, oh, okay, I'm okay. No. That's not professionalism and it's not good coaching from where
Yeah.
I stand.
Yeah. And
I
obviously,
I think I give him half of next year and he'll bail.
it's interesting too, because yeah, I was just doing obviously some research. 71, that's not easy to connect with 18 to 22-year olds. And I think a lot of, the name value of Rick Pitino just isn't there anymore. Let's be honest,
That's the
when
other
this
thing.
guy was coaching the Celtics, these kids weren't born. Or at least they weren't following the NBA or following that stuff. And I think on the other side of that, now I don't mean to make excuses for Rick Pitino or anything like that, but I do wonder if these old school coaches who have been in the game pretty much their entire life, because take the Celtics side out of it, Pitino's been a collegiate head coach and he's been successful. You can't argue that. How he's done it, you can argue that, but he's been successful. Yeah, that's another story, but that's anyways. Um, I do wonder now with this NIL and things like that, if these older coaches now kind of go, okay, look, if you're going to get paid to be here and you're going to, by all accounts, you're now a professional. I am going to treat you like a professional. Now, you don't see professional coaches putting their, running their kids over the bus like we did this past weekend. But still, I do wonder if that goes on. We saw it with Jim Boeheim towards the end. It was mainly towards the media, but you could see his frustration. I think it was a big reason why Jay Wright got out when he did from Villanova. And then,
Yeah.
Mike Krzyzewski as well. I just wonder if these coaches are stepping into a landscape that they're not the end all be all, because for a very long time, it was kind of about the coach. The coach could pack up and leave and he could coach the next day somewhere else. Up until transfers really kind of got rolling and opened up, you had to sacrifice an entire year. Did you have a red shirt? Do you want to sacrifice to go play over here? Blah, blah, blah. So I felt like the coaches had all that power. And now the kids, for better or worse, once again, I'm not arguing this or that. I do just wonder if Rick Pitino has been kind of, look, I'm going to run this like a dictatorship. My way goes. And
Right.
he's been able to say, look, you want to win championships? Then you deal with it. Well, guess what? St. John's is not winning a championship. And even towards the end there in Louisville, they weren't winning championships and everything kind of caught up with them. So I think at the end of the day, this is a turning point for a lot of old school coaches that look, not only is NIL here, And that's part of it, no doubt about it. But I also think the transfer portal, because the NIL in college football, I think is a lot bigger of a deal. College basketball,
But
not so much. There's too much to go around. It's an oversaturation. There's 350 programs in college, but there's going to be 68 teams that have a logistical chance to win a national title. There'll only be 12 in basket or in football. So I think the transfer portal in basketball is a bigger thing. You talk one way to a kid and they go, you know what? The next day they're in the transfer portal. They're free agents.
that's
Go on.
exactly what I'm thinking is okay, coach, you went and did what you did. You criticized your kids. You called kids out by name and said, he's slow. He's laterally slow. This guy's laterally slow. This guy doesn't do this. A lot of this has to do with how we recruited. Ah, really? Well, when they have a team members only meeting when the coach isn't around at the local Pizza Hut and decide, let's all transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let he wants 5 new guys. Let's give him 5 new guys. Let's bail. And you know what? Parents are, and anymore, because now we have that mentality out there. Here I go, get sounding really old again, but you have that mentality, but everybody gets a medal. Nobody loses. We don't have losers here. Everybody gets a medal. Everybody gets an award because everybody's as good as the guy who won the whole tournament. No, you're not. You may not be. You may be slow laterally or whatever. But the thing is, my point I'm trying to make is, you will have the parents and the peers that are going to support them and say, "I don't blame you. I wouldn't stick around and put up with him either. He's a has been. He's old." You know, I'm not saying that that's how my viewpoint of the guy is, but that's how people might see it.
And I think with Deion Sanders, you know, going back to what he said, calling out, and I don't fully agree with what, but at the very least with Deion, he can, I mean, some of these kids, they're at least familiar with Deion on the football field. With all due respect, you know, like I said, Rick Pitino, okay, cool. You won with, you know, Marcus Camby and UMass in the 90s. I mean, that in a lot of these kids' minds, that was like literally prehistoric. Like they look at that like we look at the 1700s. So they don't care about that. Deion now, hey, his highlights are, you know, in HD or this or that. But it always goes back to me with, you coach privately and you praise publicly. You have all those problems. Everything that Rick Pitino said is probably correct. The form he set them in is wrong. That's the thing. You don't say those things. It's very similar. Bring it back to baseball. There's a player, Anthony Rendon, who's getting paid a lot of money. And he came out and he said, look, baseball isn't my top priority. It's my family, my faith, and then baseball. Now, look, most players can say that and no one bats an eye. But when you're Anthony Rendon making $240 million on arguably the worst contract in baseball, you can't say it. So it's similar with Pitino. Like, don't say that. And then for him to say, oh, well, just because we have bad facilities, that doesn't mean you can't guard somebody. Like, well, what's the facility? I mean, goodness gracious. So there's no point to just continually drag people. And as you said, 2 days later, kind of come out and be like, oh, I was just having a, you know, temper tantrum, whatever, you know, we'll get on with this. And he has, you know, St. John's kind of, he has all the leverage. He signed a very nice deal for him. Big reason why he left, went there. But I agree with you. I think he's the one that bows out before St. John's, because this style of coaching, look, we all work with kids of the younger generation, or at least have dealt with them. That style in the 80s and 90s does not play now. It just doesn't. No. Once again, you know, it's whether you like it or not, it's not the in your face mentality anymore. To get through to these kids, it's unfortunate, but it will be interesting to see.
Right. And you go back and you look at, if you have these kids that did play, you know, a few years back and they walked onto a campus and one of the elder statesmen, Coach K, is there, or they went and they played for Jim Boeheim. Well, heck, you look at those two coaches and you look next to their name, they've been at those institutions for years, successfully. They didn't jump from here to there to the NBA and back again, and they didn't get slapped on the wrist for things that didn't look too good as far as how they were handling the college game. So yeah, this bad look for Pitino. Bad look.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to have a happy ending with the Johnnies. I don't know what the expectations were. I was intrigued by this team. I thought their ceiling was a tournament team, one of those first four or or last four in or whatever, in the first four, that 12 seed matchup or 11 seed, whatever it is, maybe that could be their ceiling. They're going to need a hell of a run to get that point, but we'll see going forward. And as you mentioned, the transfer portal, when that kind of opens up, see what happens with St. John's, because once again, you got to find it hard to believe that there are going to be a lot of kids that want to sign up for another year of that, unless something's going on behind the scenes where he's doing a lot of, mea culpa type stuff like that. So, but we'll keep an eye on that side of it as well. We are going to switch things up a little bit as we get closer and closer to March. As much as we like doing our player spotlight and things like that, talking about the Dalton Connects, the Zach Eady's, and the really good stories that are around college basketball, as we get closer, I figured might be best to maybe focus our attention towards not just player spotlights, but mid-major spotlights and low majors as well. Just for an opportunity, because look, we're going to go through some of these teams over the next 3 or 4 weeks, some of these conferences, I should say. One of these teams that we talk about is going to score upset. I don't know which one, obviously. If I did, we rolling high right now, but it's going to be one of them. And a lot of times when the tournament rolls around, the brackets come out Sunday afternoon, I always kick myself and go, why didn't I follow this conference, or why didn't I follow this team back in November after they beat this team, blah, blah, blah. So I figured this was a good opportunity to just kind of take a moment to take a look at some conferences that, for the most part, don't get a whole lot of light shined on them nationally. And one caveat as well, the WCC and the Mountain West, they're not going to be eligible for this because we already kind of spotlight them in our own reports as well. So first of these conference spotlights is going to be kind of one of the staples of the mid-major basketball side of things. It's the Missouri Valley. Now, I'll be honest, the last time I really dove into the Missouri Valley, this conference looked a lot different. The Creightons and the Milwaukees and the things like that certainly didn't have the Valpos or the Belmonts or things like that. But the Missouri Valley is a conference that is being led at the moment by a team that I brought up earlier earlier this season. It was Indiana State. However, Drake as well, right there at the top. Both of those teams are 14-3. Both of those teams are looking like they could possibly be tournament teams. Indiana State has a net of 31. Drake has a net of 44, but definitely a bubble team for both of those. They can't really have too many bad losses. Drake 15-0 at home, so keep an eye on them if they do sneak in. Now, some of these other teams, they're going to need to win their conference tournament to get in. Like I said, I don't think we see 2 or 3 teams come out of it. 1, maybe 2 out of the Missouri Valley, but you also have Bradley, Southern Illinois, Belmont, and Northern Iowa. All of those teams over 500 in conference. And then we do kind of start to go down with Illinois State, Murray State, Missouri State, Evansville, UIC, and one that is interesting to me, being down all the way 2-15 in the conference, 6-22 overall, is Valparaiso. Now, I know they did move up. I believe they're in the Horizon, or they were in a low major and they moved up to a mid major. But Valpo was they seem to be a 14 seed every single year by winning their tournament. They were kind of a low major juggernaut. The move up hasn't been great for them to the Missouri Valley. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Missouri Valley as we inch closer and closer to March?
Yeah, I very much see it the way you do. It's either going to be Drake or it's going to be Indiana State. They have split the season games. They've each taken one. Drake's on a 5-game streak right now. They've done well, but you have to go back to what happened on that game before they started their streak. They lost to Indiana State, and that's how they ended up splitting the season matchup. Drake also is going to close out against Bradley, the team that's right now sitting in 3rd, and that would be a big feather in Bradley's cap. I think it's going to be Bradley, Drake, but it's going to have to be Bradley, Drake, or Indiana State that end up winning the conference tournament. I don't see, as I'm looking at these other schools, I don't see a Missouri State or Illinois State. going on a run and taking care of business. Although Illinois State was one of those upsets back on February, let me look. Illinois State, February 13th, took down number 23 Indiana State. And that was a rush the court moment for those kids. But so anything can happen. I just think it will not happen in their tournament. I do like the way Drake's playing right now, and provided they can get past their game against Bradley, I think it's going to come down just like you would see in other conferences. You know who the final two teams are going to be in the conference tournament. I saw a projection today on one website that said at this point right now, if the Missouri Valley ends up the way it is right now, you'll see Drake possibly as a 10. Indiana State could come in as a 12. And again, that's some guy like me making those predictions. The committee might already have it drawn and said, you know, there's only one coming from that conference. We'll see. But they're playing well. And again, 23 wins. 23 wins both of those teams have. They're deserving, I think, to be in the tournament and be given the chance.
26-1 combined between those two teams at home. Very, very impressive. I think it really just encapsulates how hard it is to win on the road, really anywhere in this country, basketball wise. But yeah, at the top, obviously Indiana State and Drake. Expect to see that kind of be the Missouri Valley final. But I am a little intrigued just to kind of see who gets the overall 1 seed, at least in this conference, whether it comes down to it, because it will have to come down to a tie break. Because the difference, with all due respect to Southern Illinois, but Bradley, as you kind of mentioned, they're a team that could sneak up. And if they're a 3, the difference between having to, you know, if you're Drake right now and you finish in second via the tie break, all of a sudden you got to beat Bradley and then Indiana State, rather than the 1 seed who just got to go through Southern. And once again, no disrespect to Southern Illinois, but I do think Bradley's a much better team than Southern Illinois. So you'll only kind of have to either take down Drake or Bradley in that final, because as you said, if the only way Indiana State and Drake both make it in is we get a fantastic Missouri Valley final between those two teams. Neither of these teams can lose in their conference tournament besides the final to each other, and both make it in.
Correct.
Yeah, if Southern Illinois brings down Indiana State in the semifinals, I think Indiana State loses out. You know, and obviously other things would happen, and who knows, you know, some other crazy things could happen where other bubble teams get their bubbles burst worse. But just for the sake of it, I think, you know, it's almost like the conference, for the sake of the whole of the conference. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the Missouri Valley is going to try very hard to get Indiana State and Drake into that title game to maximize their opportunity. Because like I said, Bradley, even with that win over Drake, I don't think it's an at-large bid. And once again, even if Bradley does pull one out in that Missouri Valley final, does the loser get an at-large bid at that point? So a lot of things, but this is the best part, or well, one of the best parts about college basketball is these projections as we get to late February, early March. It's the projection game early, and then it's almost like in 1 hour on Selection Sunday, you crumple that up, you throw it away, and it's like, okay, the experts have spoken, let's move on. Or at least the people in charge have spoken. I don't know if expert's the right word there, but anything else you want to add on the Missouri Valley, Raider Jim, or do you want to move into the Gonzaga?
I think we have covered it.
I
think
agree.
we've covered it clearly.
Perfect. Well, I'll pass it over to you for the Gonzaga report. Last time we talked, we did have to take a few weeks, but last time we talked about a huge matchup with Gonzaga and Kentucky. I was very impressed with Gonzaga going to Lexington and giving the Wildcats their first 3-game home losing streak in a very long time. I had the note jotted down somewhere, but I lost it. But anyways, pass it over to you, your Gonzaga and WCC report.
Yeah, here we go. This is it. It's down to the home stretch, as you and I would say if we were talking the horses. And for all intents and purposes, St. Mary's will be the champions of the West Coast Conference for 2023-2024. They're going to close out their last 2 games against the University of San Diego, and I will never cheer harder for the Toreros than I will that night. You'd have to go back to the Brad Holland days when I cheered that hard for USD. And then they will also be closing out, and then they'll play Pepperdine And of course, they have the final game of the season against Gonzaga. Gonzaga, before they get to St. Mary's, the 2 games before that will be Santa Clara, who beat the Zags by 2 points, but has really tapered off. They are not playing exceptionally well right now, but again, everybody plays Gonzaga tough, and they will be playing USF, San Francisco, who always plays Gonzaga tough. Then they go into St. Mary's. I mean, the Zags, like I said, they've got 20 wins and 6 losses or something like that right now. And they're not ranked in the top 25, even when they beat a top 25 team. And 2, they're saying at best, maybe they'll get an 11 seed, maybe they'll get a 12 seed, and that's okay. I actually think it's good. As I sat eating my cereal the other morning and I was catching the end of Rocky 2, and I was just like, there you go. Just got to have that mentality. Get in there and take your beating, and you're going to get your bumps and your bruises, but you're going to come out the champion. Zags will have to win the West Coast Conference tournament to get the higher seed. I don't know if they go much beyond an 8, even if they beat St. Mary's. St. Mary's is just on a conference roll right now. They have just rolled through the conference, and they started out slow at the beginning of the year. So hats off to Randy Bennett. There's only going to be 2 teams from the West Coast Conference, provided the Zags play with conviction and continue to prove that, hey, we are the Zags. We didn't make it the last 22 years just because we're good. And change in personnel finally starting to come together. I think that the win at Kentucky, albeit it's not the same Kentucky, hey, that was a statement game to go into that house and win. Nobody expected Gonzaga to do that. So, except me, I think, and the other Zag faithful out there. So congratulations to them for that win. Can't wait to watch the rest of the West Coast Conference play out, and going to be one heck of a tournament. I'm actually looking into being there in person, just to see it happen when it goes down.
Nice. You just saying Gonzaga as a 11 or a 12 seed as a looking at these projections over the past few weeks, San Diego State kind of right in that 5 or 6 range. I don't care what they did in Spokane earlier this year. Gonzaga as a 12 seed or 11 seed is a scary proposition. I don't care what anyone says on that side of it. And then even going into the conference tournament, I do wonder, this might be, work in Gonzaga's favor that St. Mary's, barring something catastrophic, is going to make the tournament. And for the most part, I think we all expect the WCC tournament final to be St. Mary's and Gonzaga. I don't know. It might be the first time ever that Gonzaga has more to play for than St. Mary's. Now, obviously, the title is the title. You want the trophy. I understand that. But I don't know if St. Mary's improves their seeding too much as opposed to Gonzaga, who, as you said, could go from a 12 or 11 up to that 8, which is a much smoother, transition there. So that could be something to keep an eye on the WCC tournament. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. USD, St. Mary's. St. Mary's, I believe, still undefeated in the WCC. So they'll try to finish that off going forward. But switching gears to my side of things, it is the San Diego State report, obviously in the Mountain West. Unfortunately for San Diego State, it seems like every time they need to put in a call to the AP and the coaches and just say, look, we appreciate the love, but we don't want anyone to ever vote for us in the top 25. The only time anyone wants to put a number by our name, it needs to be on Selection Sunday. But we don't ever want to be ranked in any top 25 ever again, because the trend continues. Every time San Diego State gets ranked, usually between 22 and 19, they end up losing. And this time, unfortunately, it was to Utah State. Utah State, I can't really fault the Aztecs too much. There were certain possessions, the defensive effort maybe could have been a little better coming off screens here or there. But Utah State, in that environment, they shot the ball well. They shot the ball 50%. They got the shots that they needed down the stretch. And San Diego State, a little sloppy offensively. I mean, what's new? Jaden Ledee, a little slow of the start. Nothing to be terribly concerned with overall in that game. But it does, looking overall for the Mountain West, it puts San Diego State in a bit of a bind going forward, as they're technically now kind of in fourth place with the tiebreak and everything. The difference between 1 and 7 in this conference is 2 games. You have Utah State at the top at 10-4, and Colorado State in, whether you want to consider them 7th or tied for 3rd, doesn't matter. There's 6 teams between them. They're 8-6. The Mountain West, without a doubt, is the best conference top to bottom on the West Coast, which is crazy considering, I guess it's somewhat fitting as we about to bid adieu to the Pac-12. Arizona's good. Washington State's been on a run for the Pac-12, but not a whole lot else there. The Mountain West, they're going to get, some people have them projected to get 6 teams in. I think that's a bit much. I think we're going to be looking closer to 4 or 5, but currently, San Diego State's net is 18. I think San Diego State is the only Mountain West team that can get a 4 seed. If you look at wins like St. Mary's, they dominated St. Mary's earlier this year. And I know St. Mary's, that was a much different team, but still, that's a very good win. They took care of Washington, not a great win, but it's something to hang your hat on. And they went to Spokane and got the win over Gonzaga. So they have by far the best resume. However, if the Aztecs continue to struggle, they're probably going to get that 5, 6, or 7 going forward. But I do believe the Aztecs are firmly in. I think Utah State has punched their ticket. Now it's just time to figure out seeding wise. And, New Mexico as well. I think those 3 teams are firmly in, and Boise, Nevada, and Colorado State, maybe 2 of those 3 teams, one of those 3 teams will come out of it. Like I said, I don't think all 6 teams are going to make it in, but this is going to be the most electric conference tournament, I think, in the country, because there's going to be so much to play for. There's not going to be a guarantee for Colorado State or Nevada going into it that they are going to get in that large bid. And conversely, San Diego State, who knows they're going to get in that large bid, knows a quarterfinal loss versus a final loss or a win could be the difference between 3 or 4 seeds. That's how crazy it is. So I think you're going to see 6, 7, 8 teams that all really do believe that they have a chance to win it. I mean, I don't even want to discount Fresno State and Wyoming. I've been impressed with those teams in certain situations. San Jose State and Air Force, they're having some down years, no doubt about it. But this conference, top to bottom, is incredible for a mid-major. You want to put those in quotes, that's fine. But that's what the Mountain West is, a mid-major. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out for not just the Aztecs, but for I lost my notes for the Aztecs going forward. Give me one moment to pull up their schedule. I lost that as we get ready to kind of finish out the season for the Aztecs. I pulled up their academic schedule. I'm going to do that one moment. But for them, it's going to be Fresno State, which you have to expect, even though it is in Fresno, you would expect the Aztecs to get the job done there. And then San Jose State at home. That's got to be a blowout win for the Aztecs, with all due respect to the Spartans. They'll finish up on the road in Vegas. And then senior night, March 8th at home against Boise. That will be a big one. I think the Aztecs have to go 4-0 if they want to be a 4 seed. They have to go 4-0 and at the very least make the Mountain West final. But that's where I'm looking at for the Aztecs. A few weeks ago, we saw the committee came out and gave us their top 16, if you will, and San Diego State was, I believe, 14 or 15 on that list. So I think the committee believes in San Diego State heavily. However, a loss at Fresno State or even a loss at UNLV will really hurt their seeding going forward. But with that, we move on to the kind of tail end of our show as we always end things. It is the top upcoming games. Look, folks, now that basketball is over, baseball is just kind of dipping their toes in, and no real pressure packed stuff from the NBA or NHL. College basketball taking center stage, and Saturdays are for the ball. Let's just say, big one this coming Saturday. It will be the 24th of February. Starting us off 9 o'clock out on the West Coast. So get your coffee ready a little early. but it will be Houston at Baylor. That's number 2 Houston at number 11 Baylor. Number 8 Duke at Wake Forest. Wake Forest is firmly on the bubble. That would be a huge win for the Demon Deacons if they could bring down the Blue Devils. Number 13 Bama at number 17 Kentucky. The SEC is sneaky good this year. This might be one of the best years we've seen from the SEC. Then we see North Carolina, number 10 in the country, at Virginia. Villanova, who's been on a bit of a run, trying to make a late at-large bid. They'll have a chance to pad their resume, but a big test in stores as they face number 1 UConn, And then, of course, a game we've somewhat already alluded to, USD heading up to Moraga to face the St. Mary's Gales, number 18 for St. Mary's there. Sunday, only one that jumps out to me. You have number 15 Creighton heading to Rick Pitino's home there, St. John's. We'll see how that press conference goes on that side of it. If Creighton can continue to shoot 60%, we'll see who gets called out then. And then Monday night, big one, number 11 Baylor at TCU. TCU is another one of these teams that's going to be looking for scalps to try to pad their resume. That's going to be an incredible atmosphere in Fort Worth. And then Tuesday, 3 big ones. Kentucky, number 17 Kentucky at Mississippi State. I know I'm wearing that term out, but Mississippi State, a bubble team. And then in the Big 12, best conference in college basketball, no doubt, number 25 BYU at number 9 Kansas. And then in the Mountain West, as we kind of thin the herd here, Nevada at number 22, Colorado State. And then finally, Wednesday, the 28th of February, it will be number 14, Auburn. Very quietly, Auburn having a very good year at number 5, Tennessee. And then OU, a team I've been kind of tugging on their cape, asking them, are you going to show up anytime soon? Oklahoma at number 6, Iowa State. Number 13, Alabama, who's really good offensively. Keep an eye on them. They will head to Oxford to face Chris Beard and the Ole Miss Rebels. Another, guess what? I know, bubble team. And then Seton Hall, bubble team. At number 15, Creighton kind of ends an incredible week or two for Creighton. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? I know you're definitely going to keep keeping an eye on that USD St. Mary's matchup, but any others that really do jump out at you? Oh, did I lose you? Big delay again? Yeah. Okay.
There
Can
we
you hear
go.
me? Okay. Any thoughts on some of these upcoming games?
Well, I'll tell you what, Baylor isn't the Baylor team from a couple years ago or a few years ago, but they have streaks where they actually put together fantastic games, and I look for them to give Houston a very tough game on Saturday, especially on their home court. That's what I'm looking forward to. Kentucky, selfishly, that's one of the teams I'm looking at that's got 8 losses, 18-8 overall, and yet somehow they stay in the top 20, and it just makes me scratch my head. But I think Bama's going to give them all they can take, and then who knows? Nova might come around and put together a good game on Saturday. That would be the long shot on my ticket, but it could happen. And then other than that, the games I like BYU's chances against Kansas. BYU is playing some strong basketball. That's another team. That team gets put in as a 6 or a 7. I would not want to have them on my side of the bracket. That's going to be a strong team coming in there. And then Mississippi State against Kentucky. I look for an upset. I guess it would be an upset because Mississippi State's not ranked, but I have no doubt that Mississippi State at home is going to take care of business.
I would not be surprised, and we don't have, I mean, the line may be out. I don't have it in front of me, but I would not be surprised if Mississippi State is actually favored in that game. Probably not by a lot, but I could see them being a 1.5, 2-point favorite in that one. Just they're a really good basketball team. Once again, very streaky, but as I've alluded to earlier, it's really hard to win in this in this country or in this league, essentially. Even going back to the Mountain West, it seems like no matter what, like just getting a road win, you almost want to hang a banner for it. Same out there in the SEC. I'm with you. I really like BYU, that Kansas matchup. I just wonder, though, with Kansas, if they figure it out, obviously they're kind of running out of time. But this is a team, if they get hot at the right time, They have so much talent. They have everything. I mean, they have the facilities, they have the coach, they have the arena, everything. It just seems like they're just missing something. I don't know what it is, but I really expected more out of them. And then obviously the Mountain West side of things, Nevada, Colorado State, we're going to start seeing kind of, like I said, the thinning of the herd in the Mountain West. I think the Mountain West is kind of the biggest enemy of the Mountain West. The conference would love to get 6 teams in. However, they're just going to beat up on each other too much for that to happen. And I think this is kind of the beginning of the thinning of the herd. Like I said, I don't know fully if Colorado State has their ticket punched. I know for a fact Nevada does not. So I think both of these teams have to look at all of these games almost as must wins. So you don't head into Vegas, the conference tournament, feeling the big time stress of things. But you brought up the one that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on Saturday, Nova. I don't know. This could be I wouldn't agree if Villanova got rid of Kyle Neptune, but I would kind of understand it. You know, it is what it is. You don't want to lose X number of years in a row and kind of let that prestige get away from you. I understand it, but look, if he goes out and he gets a win in Stores, that would be huge. But it would take a monstrous performance from Villanova. But the way we've seen this year go, don't bet against it. Let's just say that. I would not feel terribly confident in really anything as we move on. But with that being said,
I had a question on the West Coast
continue.
Conference or
Yeah, no.
a question on the Mountain West Conference tournament. All teams play, or
I
do
believe
the last
so.
two get
No, so it's kind of bracketed. So I'm just pulling it up right now. Everyone will get invited, but it's kind of that 7 versus 10. So there's that like +1 round, you know. So I think the 4 and 5 is already set. And then 1, 2, and 3 will wait for their opponents. But yes, everyone will get an invite, which I don't necessarily agree with. I have actually, which is a good question. I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but does the West Coast Conference still do it to where like the 1 seed gets a bye all the way to the semifinals?
I believe they're still doing that. Yes.
Okay. And I don't think that's the worst thing, because I think for a conference, you want to give your number 1 team the best opportunity. If you're a one big conference, not to say the WCC is. So I actually kind of like that. But we do see that is kind of the way the Mountain West rolls. But like I said, with all due respect to San Jose State and Air Force, and even probably Fresno State, we could probably roll without them. But as we kind of alluded to, everyone gets a trophy these days. But anyways, Raider Jim, any final thoughts for this edition of In the Paint?
Oh, final thoughts. Here I go early on, even though we haven't had conference tournaments or it's not even close. Well, it is close, but it's not like this weekend is Selection Sunday. You know, a couple years ago, we watched the Peacocks strut through the tournament and made a lot of waves and got a lot of fans, and it was great to watch the Peacocks strut around. Get your antlers out, because I think the Grand Canyon Antelopes are going to make quite a run this year. I want to see Grand Canyon make it all the way to the Sweet 16. Those kids have only lost 2 games this year. I get it. Caliber of opposition is not like it is for a San Diego State, for a St. Mary's, or for some of the teams coming out of the Pac-12, but they play good ball. As a matter of fact, I believe early on they took out the Aztecs, didn't they?
Yeah, that was
so
like a uh-oh moment for the Aztecs. That was, is this team any good? And then we just realized it's more about that team. But now we know.
So now you heard it today. Watch out for the Antelopes.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I kind of, I was talking about San Diego State's resume. And yeah, they do have some losses that they're not going to be terribly happy about. But I don't think you can put Grand Canyon in the bad loss category anymore. That was in I don't know where they are. So I'm usually really good with where campuses are. But obviously it's in the state of Arizona. Anyways, but that was a road game that I would venture to say San Diego State's one of the few teams at that caliber that's willing to go to Grand Canyon. And that student section, folks, woo! I mean, we love it here at the show, but the Grand Canyon student section is amazing. So it's great to see Grand Canyon having a great year, if only for the fact that now San Diego State says, hey, yeah, we fell to that team, but look at what they're doing. It's going to be interesting to see how they're seeded, just first and foremost, because if they're a 14, I would not want to see that. Because are they the WAC? Is the WAC still a thing?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, I
Western
was going to
Athletic.
say, like, the WAC is, it's been a while. I think New Mexico State might still be there. They were the team that kind of won it every single year. But anyways, good call there with the Antelopes. Grand Canyon University, keep an eye on them going forward. My final thoughts, kind of backing up what you said in terms of just, we're going to get to a point in March where, the tournament tips off and that Friday night ends. And from there on out, we're going to see less and less games. So enjoy this, enjoy the, Arkansas Pine Bluff versus Southern in the, the MEAC, I think, final, when those games roll around on ESPN2, watch those games, enjoy college basketball. Because as much as I love the Villanovas and the UConns and the Dukes and this big pageantry of stuff like that, sometimes these small, low major championship games, I think, are the best. That's kind of the beginning of the March Madness, the true March Madness, because these kids winning that game is the difference between, getting so close and accomplishing a chance of playing in March Madness, even if it is for 40 minutes and you're probably going to get blown out. But with that being said,
Absolutely.
thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the In the Paint podcast, presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.
That's safe.